So how can we make our synths bigger, beefier, more interesting, and also just more professional sounding? That's what we're going to get into. Hey, I'm Isaac Schanno Johnson. If you don't know me, I'm a musician, composer, producer, and I make videos about all that fun stuff. Music composition, music production. So make sure you hit that subscribe button to see videos like this in the future. So we're talking about how to make our synths more interesting, fuller, beefier, and a little more professional sounding. So if you start by making a synth with something like a wavetable synthesizer where you're starting from simple waveforms, often it can sound kind of chiptune-y and kind of basic if you just use simple waveforms. So we're going to get into some tips that I have with how to make your synths beefier, more professional, just fuller, and just overall better synths. So mainly the technique we're going to talk about is layering, which I know that includes so many things, but we're going to talk about specific ways that we can use different effects and different ways that we can layer things together to make an overall better synth. So the first thing we can do is detune it. Now, what I mean by this is you tune it up a tiny bit, and by a tiny bit I mean like maybe 5 cents. I wouldn't really go much above 10, and I wouldn't go much below 10, right? You'd either tune it up or down 5 cents. And what you can do with this is you duplicate the sound, tune one of them up, let's say 5 cents. You duplicate that, tune that one down 5 cents, and then you play the one that's tuned directly in the middle with all of those. So what you might need to do is have a mixer at the end of your one single synth patch, because what you want is all three of those, so tuned up a little sharp, tuned down a little flat, and tuned directly in the middle, to be all playing together. And the reason you want to do this is if you tune it just sharp, the sound will be, well, a little sharp. If you tune it just flat, it'll be also just a little flat. And you don't want your synth to be overall just flat, because that's not going to sound good. But if you duplicate it and have three, one sharp, one flat, and maybe you turn them down a little bit in your mix so that you're hearing kind of a little bit of each, it'll give it this more full sound, like it has more voices in it than if you just keep the synth one single synth. This one you can think of as being similar to a choir. If you have a choir of 5 singers, they're not all going to be perfectly hitting the note the exact same way. You'll probably have some people that are slightly sharp and some people that are slightly flat. And that's fine, because together, as long as they're close enough to the note, it'll sound like one note, but it'll sound like there's multiple voices. It'll sound more full. If you have 5 people that are all perfectly hitting a note in tune, exactly the same way in tune, that might honestly sound a little weird, because you have all of these people that are the exact same pitch. Another thing we can do is duplicate it and change the octave. This one's kind of weird and can change how the synth functions in your song a little bit. So maybe not do this every time you have a synth, but similar to detuning and parallel effects processing, we can duplicate it and change it to be up an octave and down an octave, and then turn those both layers down. So if we duplicate it, we have 3 different things like we did before: up an octave, middle, down an octave. The middle one is where we want the notes to actually sound. If you were to play a note there, that's where you want somebody to hear as the principal tone. The others you can turn down a little bit. It'll add this beefiness to it, especially with the layer an octave lower. The one above can often make it sound a little more shimmery, maybe a little icier, a little shinier. If you're going for a bell sound, then you can even do 2 octaves up as well. So you have an octave and then 2 octaves up, turn them both down. Maybe the highest one even farther down. It'll make it sound a little glittery, kind of. And again, at the end, you want to process them all through a mixer so that at the end you can control the exact levels of each thing. So a couple other things that you can do are what you can think of as like parallel effects processing. I don't know if there's a specific term for this, but that's kind of what it is. Rather than adding effects just to the sound and playing the affected sound, you can duplicate it or reroute it so that it plays through the effect, and then the end result, you're hearing the original sound plus the affected sound. Some of my favorites to do this with are distortion, chorus, delay, and flanger. So I use Pro Tools and Reason, and both of them are pretty good with handling stuff like this. Reason especially, because it's very modular and very analog based, at least visually and with the routing. It's actually one of the reasons, pun intended, why I like using Reason specifically, is because you can do all of this rerouting pretty easily. So what you can do is, in Reason it's called a spider audio merger splitter, and you can use that to duplicate your sound and then process it one through whatever distortion effect you're using, and then one through straight to a mixer that you have at the bottom. So then the mixer at the bottom has the input of the original sound as well as this affected sound. Using chorus and distortion this way, I really like, because then you can really control just how much distortion you have. Often, if you're using something like distortion, you might have to dial it back so that it's not this heavy, like almost metal guitar sound. But if you're using this parallel processing type idea, then you can turn the distortion layer down a little bit and still have the original layer to listen to. So then you have the original layer plus a little bit of this distorted layer. Same thing with chorus. Chorus is another great thing to do with this type of processing. The last thing that we can do is combine all of these techniques, all three of them. So I have two songs that are coming out that I've done this on. One of them is called Layers. How fitting. So this song has all of these layers. It has one in the middle, one sharp, one flat. That's 3. That up an octave, and up an octave, sharp and flat. So that's 6. And then we have all the same stuff down an octave, sharp and flat. That's 9. And then all of that runs through these parallel effects processing ideas. So distortion, chorus, and delay, I think I add on to it, and then I mix that all at the bottom. So in the end, I do end up having to have a couple different mixers for that one single synth. But if you can get used to doing this, you can kind of make your synth pretty quickly, and you know the process of getting everything done, and you can get it done in a couple minutes, honestly. And then you have this really big, huge synth sound that's completely original, something you thought of all by yourself, something you designed to sound exactly how you wanted it to sound. And it's just more gratifying than using a preset. Also, it gets you much more knowledgeable about how to make electronic music and how to recreate the sounds that you're hearing in different songs if you can get used to doing all this stuff. That's it. Those are my tips on how to make a synth a little beefier using some layering. So those different ideas are duplicate it and tune it sharp and flat, duplicate it and do some parallel effects processing, and duplicate it and put it up and down an octave. Now, something you don't have to do all of them, obviously, every single time you make a synth, but choose a different one every time you're making a synth and try to add this into your music, because it can get you a little more knowledgeable, a little faster with designing your own synths. And my favorite thing about it is you can listen to a song. For example, I really like Porter Robinson as an artist. I've been listening to him a lot, and a lot of Edit and Glitch Mob, and I can listen to their music, hear their synths, and be like, how did they create that? What did they do to get those different sounds in there? And Porter Robinson especially, his music tends to have these synths that are huge. They're massive, right? And a lot of this stuff is how he's doing it. He's duplicating it, and he might have a synth that has, 9, 10 different layers, and they're all ever so slightly different, so that when you put them together, it sounds like this huge choir of a synth that's hitting you. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something about music. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and as always, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.